I don't know. It's a year. We started last year in June. Remember, Philip?
Yeah, of course I remember. It's flown by. I mean, it's been great. It's been terrific.
But yeah, I remember
Every
we spoke
class.
about it a little earlier, and then I was back and forth a little bit to New York. So we waited a few weeks. I ordered a whole box of Svarim from New York, and then
That's
at
right.
one
I
point I
remember
just
you were
took the
very
plunge.
excited.
Yeah,
very excited. It's been a wonderful class.
it's funny. Hannah also asks me sometimes, like, because there's so many. I bought over the year. I bought a bunch of different farms. Some of them I look at on a weekly basis. Some of them not necessarily. But like I found my groove, if you know what I mean. And
I know what you mean. You got your groove.
Yeah, I still every time I go into a Svarim store, I'll always ask them, "What do you have on Tehillim?" I always ask. I don't ask so much on Pirkei Avos, or I always ask, "What do you have on Tehillim?" And then I look at it. It used to, in the beginning, I bought it. Didn't matter what it was. Now I look at it because now I understand what I'm looking for. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if Meir Shleim is ready to come into the camera, and then we'll start. What? It's so peaceful over there. And why did I take you away from there?
Hi, Mayor. Hello, Merel.
Say hi.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi. You want to see something? You want to see something cute? Here, 1 second. Where is it?
Merel, you're smiling.
Yeah, learning Torah. So while I was preparing for today's class, Hannah got this picture. You see, I have the Svarim open in front of me, and he's enjoying.
Hi, Merel.
Yeah.
He's happy now. He's actually drooling. He's okay now.
Yeah, he wants to eat. He's hungry. His mother's busy eating supper right now, so he's gonna have to wait a few minutes.
Hello, Merel.
He's waiting.
Hello.
His sisters, Mushka and Chiana, just came back. They took him for a walk around the block.
Ooh.
Right, Meir Shleim? Yep, definitely a cutie. Can I not? Yeah.
Happy? He's quite happy.
He's a happy boy. He gets what he wants. All he needs is to do a little kvetch, and all of a sudden everybody's jumping. So what's not to be happy about? Can you imagine if we had that?
I'm going to learn some Torah. Lucky.
Yeah. Okay. All ready?
Give her a chance, your wife.
One moment.
Thought you were giving him back already. Wait.
I am.
Give her a chance. Give her a chance to eat.
He's gonna hear. Right, Meir Shleim? You know, listen. I asked him. I said, you learned this kapitel already. You tell me something good about this kapitel. I bugged him like crazy.
You're not listening. He's telling you.
Exactly. That's the truth. We talk, we don't listen. Yeah. Anyways, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, it's a good boy, and he even let us prepare for today's class. And Hannah helped me with the notes. And at one point, I wasn't sure if we were going to get through the notes. But Baruch Hashem. Okay, I'm gonna put everybody on mute.
What a hot day today, eh?
Yeah.
Very hot.
Yep. Okay. Let's mute. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment. Capital Mem, chapter 40. So the few lines on the top, I gave away some of it in the email that we sent out. The psalmist speaks of the numerous wonders that Hashem wrought for the Jewish people, asking, who can articulate his might? I would relate and speak of them, but they are too numerous to recount. He created the world and split the sea for the sake of Israel, yet he desires no sacrifices, only that we listen to his voice. So this is one of the fascinating things that are brought down in today's Kapitel Tehillim. So, as we usually do, we're going to go through the Kapitel once with a basic translation, and then we'll come back at a second time, and we'll go a little deeper, a better understanding in the holy words of King David. Lam Natseach for the conductor, Lidavid by David, Mizmar, a psalm. Chana says that the Meir Shleima is repeating everything. Yeah. So this is the psalm by King David. Kavoi kivisi Hashem. Kaveh is the idea of putting trust, putting hope in Hashem. But here, and we'll talk about it, it's a double lashon. Kavoi kivisi. I put my hope, but in a double lashon and a double wording in Hashem. Vayet Elai, he turned to me. Vayishma shavasi, and Hashem has heard my cry. Vayaleini, and he lifted me up. Mibar sha'in, from a pit, from the depths of the pit. Mitit hayavein, from some sort of mud, from some sort of tit is usually what's that mixture? Not tar. We put between the bricks.
Mortar.
Cement.
Mortar.
Yeah, mortar. Exactly. Yeah. So tit is mortar. Mitit hayavein, from this type of mortar. But that's not the way most.
Tit also for the houses when they had tsaros. Didn't they have teeth on them? You had to take off when you saw the tsaros of the house. You had to scrape off. I'm trying
to remember the word, but I don't remember it. But I'll look at it.
Scrape off the teeth, I think.
It could be, and that would make, and that's the idea of mortar, right? That makes perfect sense.
Well, that would be more plaster.
Back in the day, I don't think they plastered.
Well, they did, believe me.
Yeah?
They did.
Okay. Yeah, so Vayakem, I'll say, but the translations you'll see if you look through translations, different translations for that. Vayakem al sela ragloi, and Hashem also lifted me up onto a rock, my feet onto a rock. Koine nashurai, and steadying my steps. Vayitem befi shir chadash, and he put into my mouth a new song. Tehillah lelikenu, a song of praise to Hashem. Yiru rabim v'yiro, many will see. This is where Hebrew differs from English. It says Yiru will fear, many, V'yiro, Yiru will see, many will, Yiru, Rabim, many will see, V'yiro, and they will fear. But as we talked about many times, the idea of fear is the idea of awe, V'yivtechu b'Hashem, and that will translate into trust, putting their trust into Hashem. Ashrei HaGever, fortunate is the man. Asher Sam Hashem Miftachoi, that makes Hashem his place of trust. And he doesn't turn to Rehavim, which we'll translate on the second round, and those who turn astray. Rabbi Sasisa, you have done much. Ata Hashem Elikai, you Hashem, my Hashem. Nifla Isecha, your wonders, your miracles. Umachshiv Isecha, and your thoughts. Elenu are towards us. Ein Areich Elecha, compared to you, there is no comparison. Agida v'adaveda, I will repeat and I will speak. It's more of like in the form of a story. Agida, I will say it in the form of a story. Adaveda, I will speak them. Otzmu misaper, but ultimately they are too numerous to count, to say over. Zevach u'mincha, different types of sacrifices, right? We know there's a zevach mincha, there's a mincha, there's a zevach sacrifice, a mincha sacrifice. Lo chafatzta, you do not desire. Oznayim korisali, what do you have? You have ears that are turned towards me or open towards me. Oila v'chata, another two different types of offerings, an oila and a karban chatas. Lo sha'alta, you have not requested. Oz amarti. And also this pasuk, I mean, it's fascinating, different commentaries, how they explain this pasuk, as we will get to in the second round. As a Marty, and I have said, or then I have said, Hine Basi, I have come, b'Megillas Sefer, with a scroll, a Megillah. Megillah is a scroll, right? It's not, but it's a Sefer, it's a book. Kosav Alai, written for me. Pasuk number 9, Pasuk Tes, Lasis Yitzayincha, to do your will, Elikai my Hashem, Chafatzti, that's what I want to do. B'Seirascha, and your Torah, B'Seich Meyai, is part of my innards. Bisarti tzedek, I proclaim, or I've given over about Hashem's righteousness, about your righteousness. B'kol rav, in front of the multitudes, in front of a big crowd. Hine svasai loy echla, my lips I will not hold back, I will not restrain my lips. Hashem atayadaita, and who knows the most about this? Hashem, you know best. Your righteousness, I do not cover over, I do not conceal. Libi, within my heart. Emunascha, your faithfulness. Ushuascha, and your deliverance. Amarti, I have talked about, I have said, I have declared. Like Ichadati, I didn't hide. Chazdacha, your kindness. Amitcha, your truth. Lakal Rav, to the vast, to the multitudes, to the people, to the crowd. Ato Hashem, you Hashem, loisichla rachamecha mimeni, don't withhold your mercy from me. Chazdecha v'amitcha, your kindness and your truth, tamid yitzruni, will always guard me. Ki afafu alai, they've surrounded me. What surrounded me? Rois adin mispar, evil, bad. Rois, ra, bad. Adin mispar, there's too much to count. Hisiguni avenesai, my sins have caught up with me. That's the literal translation. I'm sure your translations maybe say a little bit differently. Over here it says, my sins have overtaken me. Hisiguni is from the word hisig. It has gotten to me. It has caught up with me. It has gotten to me. To the extent that I couldn't see. Otzmu misaris reishi. They are more. They're more than the hairs on my head. The libi azavani, and my heart has left me or has abandoned me. Did it say Hashem lahatzileni? May it be your will. May it be the rotzen of Hashem lahatzileni, to save me. Hashem le'ezrasi chusha. Hashem, to my salvation, to my help, to help me. Chusha, hurry. Yevaishu v'yachperu yachad. They should be ashamed and humiliated together. Those who want my soul in order to end it, to end my life. Let them retreat, let them go backwards. Let them be disgraced. Those who want the bad in me, meaning to harm me. Yashaimu, they should be desolate. Alekev bashtam, in return for their shaming. Ha'imrim, those who say to me, ha'ach, ha'ach. Over here he translates it, aha, aha, which we'll get a better understanding of this pasuk on the second round. Yasisu v'yismachu b'cha. Yasisu is one type of rejoicing. Yismachu is another type of rejoicing. Over here he says exult and rejoice. Two types of being. When it comes, we'll talk about it more in the second round, but the idea of joy is something very big and a part of Judaism and our relationship with Hashem. It's got to be done with joy. So you'll see there's so many words for joy. And as we've mentioned many times, whether you heard it from me or from my father, there's no Hebrew word for happiness, but there's many words for joy, and all different gila, rina, ditzvah, all different types of joys that we talk about under chuppah, etc. Over here he mentions two of them. Yasisu v'yismechu, the idea of joy, exult and joy and rejoice, becha, in you, capital Y, in Hashem. Anybody who seeks Hashem, Yaimru, they'll say, Tamid, all the time, Yigdal Hashem. They'll always say, may the name of Hashem grow, go up. Those who love Hashem's help, meaning the deliverance that comes from Hashem. But for me, David HaMelech, Ani v'evyin, I'm poor and needy. Hashem, Yachshavli, Hashem, please think of me. Ezrasi Mefalti, You are my help and my rescuer. Ata, you are my help and my rescuer. Alikai, my Hashem. Al te'achar, do not delay. So it's the truth is, out of many of the kapitloch that we've done so far, this one is it's a relatively straightforward. It flows, so to speak. Sometimes you get to a capital that you need to make it flow, but there's different commentaries and make it that talk about it from different perspectives, and I always find it fascinating, especially some of the generic commentaries like Rashi and Radak that come and have different approaches. When it's one thing, if the Alshich goes on his way, that I understand, but when Rashi and Radak look at one capital and they have a kind of a radically different view on how to learn this capital, it's a fascinating thing to me. And we have it over here. First of all, the Radak says that this capital, this chapter of Tehillim, is continuation of the previous chapters of Tehillim. Previous chapters of Tehillim talked about going through a very hard time. What did we say in the previous chapters? If someone's going through a hard time, these are the chapters to say. These are the chapters that David HaMelech said, King David said, when he was going through a hard time. So naturally, this is a good idea, a good chapter to say, if we are going through a hard time, if it works for King David, it could work for me too. It should work for me too. If we say it sincerely, it will work for me. But this chapter, slightly different than the previous chapters, is that the Radak says that it's a person that gets better after they said the previous chapters. I think it's the previous 2, maybe 3, that are said when you're going through a hard time. Now, when someone gets better, this is the chapter to say when someone gets better. And the Sforno says, and this is connected to what the Radak says, that David HaMelech composed this after he got better, meaning the other 2 chapters that David HaMelech said when things weren't going so well and he was asking for Hashem's help, this chapter is a thank you to Hashem that things are getting better. Rashi, on the other hand, says that this chapter David HaMelech composed, but he composed for all the Jewish people. It wasn't something personal, it was something general, and it was a thank you for the miracles that happened to the Yidden over the years, taking them out of Mitzrayim, splitting of the sea, and giving them the Torah, the different things, and that's what Rashi says. And Rashi actually brings out, it doesn't bring it out in every pasuk, but at different points throughout this capital, he makes a note to say, "Oh, this is referring to this miracle. This is referring to that miracle," which is, that's the lishipase, as we call it. Yeah.
Just from this little explanation that I'm reading at the bottom of the book that I have, it says, based on our verse, Rashi argues that Yosef was incorrect and trust. Just a second. I'm happy as man. Based on our verse, Rashi argues that Yosef was incorrect in trusting in the Egyptian butler to save him and should have relied directly on God. In other words, this has to do, he's comparing, I think, himself and his problems with the problems which came to Yosef, because this is exactly the beginning. He was in a pit. Hashem took Yosef out of the pit.
So it's very, very, there's a medrash that connects it to Yosef, but a specific pasuk, not the whole chapter.
Okay.
But anyway, I saw it. I wasn't going to bring it up because it's like a whole different category of commentary on really. One pasuk, though.
Well, he says pasuk 5. Happy is the man who puts his trust in Hashem. He did not turn to the arrogant and followers of deceit. But what about the beginning? He lifted me out of the dark pit from the slimy mud. What could be more specific to Yosef than he was thrown into a pit?
And I didn't see that written anywhere, but on pasuk 5 it does mention it very specifically in more than one place that it's referring to Yosef.
And it's interesting.
Yosef ultimately was punished for what he did, right?
That's right, but still, it's interesting to know because who do we call a tzaddik? Almost nobody, but we call Yosef a tzaddik and we call David HaMelech a tzaddik. So it's interesting how they compare to each other as two tzaddikim,
Yeah. To even a further extent, I mean, this is something that's talked about a lot in Chassidic philosophy, because what did Yosef do wrong? yes, he put his trust in Hashem, but he was making a keli, we call it, right? He was making a vessel for the blessing of Hashem. He was asking someone for help. It's like saying, I won't go to the doctor because I'm putting my trust in Hashem. I'm not going to ask this one for help because I put my trust in Hashem. Yosef kind of was trying to do what he needed to do to the extent that comparing to others, comparing to other of our forefathers, they did ask for help along the way. So why, according to the Alter Rebbe, the Yosef Tzaddik was even on a higher level, and since he was on a higher level, he needed to deal with it on a higher level, meaning that he shouldn't have asked for help. He should have just put his trust in Hashem. But anyways, so it's a whole conversation. It could be a whole class for itself. But it's primarily on pasuk 5. Primarily on pasuk 5. There's another pasuk also that is brought up in Mamloyas as well. Anyways, okay. So again, what I mentioned is that there's a difference in the approach between the Radak and Rashi. Not just the Radak, Sfarnu, Meiri. Many of the commentaries say that this chapter is about David Melech getting better and thanking Hashem, and therefore we should also use it in such scenarios when we are in bad shape. So we daven to Hashem, but when things get better, don't forget to thank Hashem, and this is a good chapter for that. And Rashi says that it is a thank you for the miracles that Hashem did for the Jewish people on their way out of Egypt and going into the land of Israel, and also giving them the Torah. Pasuk number 2. So the Radak explains this pasuk, Kaveh kivisi, that I put my hope in Hashem. I put my hope in Hashem. This is a theme of David HaMelech, that when I put my hope in Hashem, he listens to me and he's turning towards me. It's a simple understanding of pasuk number 2. I put my hope in Hashem and Hashem turns to me and he listens to my call, to my prayer, to my ask. The Alshich says that the reason, and I mentioned it the first time around, that it says it 2 times, Kavai kivisi, I put my hope in Hashem. What's the idea of 2 times? So the Alshich says that we learn from here, and not just from here, it's a famous statement from our sages, that if we try once, let's say we need a blessing, and we ask, and we call out to Hashem, and we try once, and it doesn't work. Right? We're asking we need some help, whether it's medical, whether it's financial, whatever it is. We have some troubles and we need some help, and we cry out to Hashem, we daven to Hashem, and it doesn't work. We didn't get an answer. We're waiting for an answer. Then the answer didn't come. Comes David HaMelech and says, yes, that was me. We think I called out to Hashem, and 10 seconds later, no, as we know, David HaMelech suffered tremendously over a long period of time. Kavai kivisi, I put my hope, and even if I didn't get an answer right away, I put my hope in Hashem. I didn't take my hope away. It didn't dampen my hope. I call out once, I call out a second time, and ultimately, because of putting my hope and my trust in Hashem, Hashem has turned to me, and that's Kaveh Kivisi. I had to do it more than once, right? Vayet Elai, and ultimately Hashem has turned towards me. Vayet means turning towards, and the Alshich explains it that Hashem the relationship was a little bit strained, it was a little bit removed. Therefore, Hashem had to turn from further away, and Vayishma Shavasi, and Hashem heard my prayer. And that's a very important lesson for us, that sometimes we cry out to Hashem. Hashem didn't hear. Maybe we didn't cry out enough. Maybe we need to daven again, etc. And we should never give up hope. We shouldn't say, "Oh, I davened and I can't do it anymore." No, we have to continue davening and hoping for the best. The Mamloya says that if you look at the words, it says Kavai Kivisi Hashem. I put Kavai. I put my hope. I put my trust. I put my Kaveh is like something that I look towards, that I look forward to. This is what I want. And what does David HaMelech want? All he wants is Hashem. It's an interesting way to look at the words. Kaveh kivisi, that all I want is Hashem. Many people want many different things. Many people cry out to Hashem for many different things. What does David HaMelech want? Kaveh kivisi. What's my hope? Where am I looking towards? There's one direction that I'm looking towards, one direction that I want. There's one thing that I want. It is Hashem, a relationship with Hashem, a connection to Hashem. Pasuk number 3, and so this is the idea that Hashem, so the Pashup Pshat, right? That Hashem take him out from the depths. when someone goes through a hard time, they're in the depths, right? And then there was the slimy mud, the tita yavin, or the other things that we mentioned, and to be on a rock, and to set on the straight and narrow. So there's a few things over here. So first of all, Rashi comes and says, as we mentioned in the beginning, Rashi has his commentary over here saying that these psukim are talking about miracles that happened to the Jewish people, not necessarily things that happened to David HaMelech, to King David. So Rashi says that this is referring to the slaves being freed out of Egypt, and that they didn't die in the sea and the splitting of the sea. So that's what Rashi says, that Vayeh Eleni, to lift up from the pit, that's a slave being lifted out from the depths. And to be on a rock instead of in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the sea, those are the two miracles that are being referred to over here, according to Rashi. The Metzudah says that this tita yavein, which in my translation over here, he calls it slimy mud. So the Metzudah says that it's referring to something called quicksand. He doesn't write quicksand. He says that it's a type of sand that if you stand on it, you start sinking. So the idea of quicksand, and Hashem not only pulls him out of the quicksand, it says that he also puts him onto a rock, onto a stone, onto strong ground. So it's one thing, and this is a theme, the way David HaMelech, maybe kavei kivisi, maybe you need to daven once, maybe you need to daven twice, maybe you need to ask Hashem more than once. But when Hashem helps, He doesn't just pull you out of the quicksand and okay, figure it out. No, once He's pulling you out, takes you and puts you onto a rock, onto solid ground, onto somewhere that you're not gonna fall again. The Radak says that David HaMelech is referring to himself of not feeling well, that we talked about in the previous psukim, that when a person's not well, he feels like he's drowning. He can feel like he's in a pit. And the Radak says that a pit, what's the fear of the pit? The fear of the pit is not so much that you're in a hole. The fear of the pit is that chas v'shalom, water could come and you'll drown in the pit. So Koinen and Ashurai, the last words of making my feet straight, keeping my feet on the straight and narrow, is that not only Hashem saves him, but also that he doesn't fall sick again right away, that he doesn't, that's not that Hashem makes him better, but then all of a sudden there's another sickness around the corner, that he gets better and he stays better.
Maybe it is referring to Yam Suf, because the opening of the sea, and because the Jews, when they were going in, they went in, it was water. They didn't understand if they were going to be saved or not. They got up to their necks until the sea opened, and actually Pharaoh did get stuck. I mean, they got on dry land, but when Pharaoh went in, his chariots got stuck in the mud. And why I'm saying all this, it says Vatiten befi shir chadash. What did they say when they sang the song?
Oh, that's the next pasuk. We'll get there in a moment.
At the sea. Didn't they say Shir Chadash?
Yeah. That's what Rashi says. So you're saying exactly what Rashi says. That's the approach of Rashi. We'll get to the next pasuk in a moment.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Just to finish off pasuk number 3, that the Sfarnu says that the last words, Koinen Ashurai, about steadying my steps, about making on the straight and narrow, the Sfarnu explains it that when someone gets sick, sometimes they're talking about it now with COVID, that some people, they're calling them long haulers, that Nebuch, they get sick, but they could be, some people are 6 months, 8 months. I know someone here in Dollar that had COVID in the beginning. So we're talking about a year and a half ago, and he still can't smell and taste. Still can't smell the taste. That should be the worst thing, right? There's some people that have no koyach, they have no strength still from having COVID. It's a tiny percentage, but they're calling them long haulers. But in general, there's different types of sicknesses out there, not just COVID. And Nebuch loyaleno, and not on anybody, that sometimes when a person gets sick, there's remnants of it that never goes away. And that is something that the way the Sfarnu says, Koinen Ashurai, about steadying my steps, is the idea that David HaMelech is saying that even though he wasn't well for a while, but ultimately when Hashem saved him, when Hashem helped him, it made sure that the sickness didn't have a long-lasting effect. The Al-Sheikh over here comes and says, and he also has an approach to the Kapitel Tehillim in different psukim. He mentions it, that it's talking about miracles that happened to King David, but specific miracles. And he says this pasuk is referring to Goliath, to Goliath, and to Achish, two stories that we've talked about at length in previous chapters of Tehillim, and also being saved. There's a famous story of David HaMelech being saved from Shaul while he was climbing on the rocks. Those who are going to learn about King David straight from Shmuel are going to learn about this, but there's a specific story of him being saved from King Saul, from Shaul HaMelech, while climbing on the rocks. So the Al-Sheikh says that it's referring to these three miracles. Pasuk number 4. So pasuk number 4 says, "Vayitain," and he gave to me into my mouth shir chadash, a new song. So Rashi, as I mentioned already, and Philip brought up, that's what's the Shir Chadash? Shir Chadash is the Shira, is the song that they sang at the sea. And that's the previous pasuk talks about the miracle of them being saved from the sea. So what happens in the next pasuk? That Hashem gave them a new song, the Az Yashir, right? That they sang at the sea. And that's Rashi Lishitase in his approach that is talking about miracles that happen to the Jewish people, says that this Shir Chadash is referring to the Shira, the song that they sang after the splitting of the sea, thanking Hashem for not only saving the Jewish people, but drowning the Egyptians that were trying to run after them, etc. So that is Rashi's approach, Rashi's way of learning this chapter. The Radak says that, David HaMelech says that when Hashem saved me, he also gave me a new song. He gave me new words. And Bechlal, in general, David HaMelech, and we have this in other Kapitel of Tehillim, David HaMelech says we're obligated to thank Hashem anytime something good happens. You know, it's easy when something bad happens to say, "Oi, Hashem, help me out. I need help, and please come to my aid and help me." It's easy to say that, and then when Hashem Taka helps, we forget to thank. It's very important to thank. The Rebbe used to complain that people would always would send him asking for brachas, and then he wouldn't hear. They get a bracha, things Taka got better, and they forgot to notify the Rebbe. The Rebbe would ask that you should give me good news. My parents have an unbelievable answer from the Rebbe. My brother Mendel, the one right under me, when my parents were expecting him, the Rebbe wrote just the two words, Tevas Shri, you should give me good news. And they wrote into it about a problem with the pregnancy, and that Rebbe actually wasn't just those two words. It was Tevas Shri, you're going to give me good news, and Asker Al-Tzion, and I'll mention it at my father-in-law's oil. I'll mention it at the oil. And Baruch Hashem, my brother Mendel, everything went smoothly. But this idea of Tavasi Toiv, that Rebbe is asking for good news. That was in general, this idea that we should make sure to thank. So this is David HaMelech mentions, and the Radak says that over here he's talking about the obligation that he feels that we always have to thank, thanking Hashem for the good, but not only to thank Hashem. When we thank Hashem, it shouldn't be like, "Oh, thank you." No, every time we thank Hashem, it should feel like new. That's the way the Radak learns it. It's not that it's a new song. It's the same thank you. No, it should feel like a new thank you. You're saying the same two words, thank you. You're saying the same thing, again, thank you. It shouldn't feel like you're saying it again, thank you. It should feel like something new. And so general, it's a powerful lesson that we should learn. Very often we take things for granted, or we say thank you in a for granted way. Of course I have to say thank you. I didn't say thank you to my spouse. Of course I say thank you, but it should feel like something new, not the same thank you that the way it felt yesterday, and to Hashem as well. And those who witness, and those who, and then he ends off, right? Yiru Rabin, those many who are going to witness what Hashem does for me. And they're maybe not so convinced, right? But what are they going to see? They're going to see what Hashem does for me. So they're going to be in awe of Hashem, and that's going to help them return to Hashem. It's going to help them to do tshuva. So first of all, I'll thank Hashem for what you've done to me. This is the way the Radak explains it. First, I'm going to thank Hashem for what you've done. I'm going to make the thank you in a format of a brand new song, not the same thank you as yesterday, and not the same thank you as last year, and not the same thank you as the year before. It's a new thank you. It's going to feel like new. And by me saying thank you to Hashem, people are going to witness what Hashem has done for me, and it will inspire them to be in awe of Hashem. Yiru Rabim, many will see V'yiro, and they'll be in awe. Yira, from the word, from the fear, the idea of awe, and it will lead them to return to Hashem. It will lead them to tshuva. The Svarnu says over here that I'll praise out loud, that people will hear, and they will know of the bad that happened to me. And I'll know the bad that happened to me, where did the bad come from? There's only one place that bad comes from. It's because I did something wrong, and therefore it has to be corrected. And then what's going to happen? They're going to recognize that this is what sin brings. So then they're going to fear sin and put their trust in Hashem, and they're going to know that Hashem will help them because Hashem helped me. If Hashem helped me, the last pasuk talks about David Melech. He says, "Vani ani v'evyin," I'm poor and desolate. Right? David Melech was a humble man. So they're going to see if Hashem helped David Melech, for sure there's hope for me that Hashem will help me. So again, the Sfarno, takes the words and learns them in a different way, that the awe is going to be of the fear is going to be of sinning in order to put their trust in Hashem. The Alshich says, how do I know? David Melech says, how do I know that everything that was done comes from Hashem? The Alshich, remember, translated the previous pasuk, or the one before, that it's referring to the miracles of Goliath and Achish and Shaul HaMelech, all these people that tried to kill David, and they were not successful. So how do I know that the fact that they weren't successful, that it comes from Hashem? So he says, "Vayiten b'fi shir chadash," as pasuk number 4 says, that Hashem put in my mouth a new song. So I know that it came from Hashem. I didn't compose this. This didn't come from me. It just happened. It came into my mouth. So I know that it all came straight from Hashem, not because of any of my merits, not because of things that I deserve, etc., or I think that I deserve. It came straight from Hashem. Pasuk number 5, Ashrei HaGever. So Ashrei HaGever, praised is the man. This is also a theme in Tehillim, praising the man for walking in the proper way. The Metzudah says that it's a continuation of the previous pasuk. The previous pasuk says that those who are going to see that Hashem has helped me are going to turn around and do tshuva. Ashrei HaGever, praises the man. Gever is today in modern Hebrew is used as like a man's man, a gever. A gever means a chevraman, So Ashrei HaGever, the guy who has the guts to do tshuva, the person, man, woman, it doesn't matter. The person who has the guts, Ashrei HaGever, praises the man, praises the person who has the guts to stand up and say, 1 second, I recognize that something amazing happened to King David. I'm in awe of that. I'm gonna go turn around and do tshuva. It takes a special, honest person with himself to recognize something that it comes from Hashem. We could look at Niagara Falls and we could say, well, yeah, I could give you all this a science class of exactly what happens and how it happens, or you could say, how awesome is Hashem? Your choice. Nobody can convince you one way or the other. I'm convinced one way, someone else might be convinced another way, and that's it. That's the way it is. And we're going to live together in the same world. That's fine, right? Ashrei HaGever praises the man that could recognize something and it could actually make a change in his life because of it. We recognize many things. We come across many things in our life. We see many things in our life. How much of it actually makes an effect on us? Comes the Metzudas and says that if it makes an effect on you, if witnessing Hashem's help to King David makes an effect on you for you to turn around and do tshuva, Ashrei HaGever, you're praised is such a person. The Mamlei says that Ashrei HaGever is the Shir Chadash that is mentioned in the previous pasuk, that it's the words of Hashem through King David, that this new song is that these words are coming from Hashem. Ashrei HaGever, praised is the person who puts his trust in Hashem. And Hashem is praising the person who puts their trust in Hashem. Pasuk number 6. So you've done many things. You've created the word. So Rashi, as we said, Rashi says that it's referring to, this whole chapter is referring to the many miracles that happened to the Jewish people over the years. So Rashi says over here that you've created the world, you've split the sea, provided 40 years in the desert, right? Ein erech. Hashem can't be compared to anything else, to any other ruler, any other king. Melech Malchi Amlachim, king of all kings. So that's the way Rashi, Lishitase, according to his approach to this chapter, that's the way he learns. There's other Mefarshim that explain it, that you've done so many miracles for me, Rabbi Sasisa, Niflei Secha, you've done so many miracles for me. You can't compare the amount of things that Hashem has done for King David to anybody else that could do something for somebody else. You've done so much. And not only that, as he ends off, there's so many, I can't even count them. The Al-Shich explains this pasuk that David HaMelech is saying that the Melech Malchi Amlachim is not like a Melech Basar V'Dam. The king of all kings is not like a king of flesh and blood, like a physical king. Because when a king of flesh and blood does for somebody else, ultimately it's for their own benefit. Even if it's a selfish king that does for somebody else, we know for sure it's for his own benefit. But even a king that is, that really cares about his subjects. But ultimately, what does he want? He wants to keep his throne, and he wants to keep his people, so that way he has a malucha, he has a kingship. Hashem is not that way. Hashem, his relationship with others, meaning his relationship with people, doing something for somebody, for David HaMelech in this case, is altruistic. It's not for Hashem. Hashem doesn't need any of it, right? He's doing it just for David HaMelech. And that's the Rabbi Sasisa, Otzmu Misaper, that we can't, the Ein Erech, there's no comparison between Hashem and any others. Not that we needed David HaMelech to tell us, but it's just a form of praise towards Hashem. Pasuk number 7. So this we talked about in the email and already talked about in the beginning, that Hashem doesn't want these types of sacrifices. You don't want. You want aznaim. Your ears are turned towards me. And then again, another 2 types of sacrifices. You didn't even ask for. So what's this idea? So Rashi comes here and says, based on psukim from Yirmiyahu, from Jeremiah, from Yirmiyahu, Hashem says that I asked you. What does it say in the beginning of Chumash Vayikra? Adam mikem ki yakriv. Hashem wants something from the person. Hashem wants something from the person. No, it's not about the daily sacrifices or the Shabbat sacrifices. That's not what it's about. It's not about the regular sacrifices. What Hashem wants is that he asked for something. V'naser tzayni. I asked and you did what I asked. That's what Hashem wants. That's in general. It's a concept. This is the general. What's a mitzvah? Mitzvah is not that you keep Shabbos because it's a beautiful day to get to spend with family. And okay, there's some rules involved, so that way we don't get sidetracked and watch the hockey game instead of a Torah class. That's what's happening tonight for some people. but so Shabbos, you're not going to watch the hockey game because you're going to spend time with family. And there's rules that make sure that you can't watch the hockey game. You find out after Shabbos what the score was, right? That's one way to look at it, but it's a very low level way of looking at it. Really, it's Hashem asked, and therefore we do it. And that, therefore, as we talked about, especially Parshas Chukas, most recently, that all mitzvahs are chukim. Ultimately, all mitzvahs are because Hashem asked, and we're doing what Hashem asked. That's it. It's not very complicated. We don't need it. Yes, ultimately we want nishma. There's nasa. We do because that's what Hashem wants. And then we want to understand it a little bit better, get a better appreciation for it. But ultimately, the real reason why we're doing it is because that's what Hashem asked. So why we bring a sacrifice? So Rashi goes on and says, why we bring a sacrifice? Why do we bring a carbon oila or a carbon a zevach or a mincha or a chatas? Why we bring it? Because Hashem asked, and that's why we're doing it for that. It's not that Hashem wants this tafka. Hashem wants us to do what he asked, and that's it. And therefore, especially today, where we can't bring sacrifices, not that we should feel bad we can't bring sacrifices. We should feel bad that we can't bring sacrifices because we want Mashiach to come. But beyond that, it's not that it's sacrifice. No, there's another opportunity to connect to Hashem. Yes, in the right time, there's a sacrifice to connect to Hashem. That's not right now. Right now, there's Torah learning to connect to Hashem. This morning, there was tefillin to connect to Hashem. Friday evening, there's Shabbos candles to connect to Hashem. And 613 times, who knows how many, because each mitzvah, it gets fractured into a bunch of smaller mitzvahs, smaller in a form of meaning, not the literal idea of a mitzvah, but there's so many mitzvahs. And what are they? They're about a connection to Hashem. Just like the bringing of a sacrifice was a connection to Hashem, because Hashem asked, and therefore we do. And that's the way Rashi explains this pasuk, that Hashem doesn't want sacrifices. Hashem just wants for you to do what He asked. That's it. That's what Rashi means. The Metzudas takes it in a very different way. The Metzudas says, what's he saying over here? He's talking about sacrifices, not talking about the daily sacrifices. He's talking about sacrifices that a person might have to bring because he did something wrong. Different sacrifices, different categories. But the Metzudah says that David HaMelech is saying, Hashem doesn't want your sacrifices. A person might come and say, what do you mean? I sinned. I sinned because I wanted to come and bring a sacrifice. Imagine, someone could say that. Someone could even think that I want an opportunity to go to the Beis HaMikdash and bring a sacrifice. So, okay, I'll do this little sin, so that way I can bring a sacrifice. So the Metzudah says that's what David HaMelech is saying over here. Hashem doesn't want you to sin in order to have to bring a sacrifice. That's another approach. The Svarno, he says something beautiful. He says that what David HaMelech is saying over here is that Hashem doesn't even want the sacrifice to be mechaper, to atone for the sin. Person sins. So in the times of the Beis HaMikdash and before, a person would bring a sacrifice, bring a carbon. That carbon is an atonement for the sin that the person did. That's not what Hashem wants. That's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants you to turn around and do tshuva. Okay, if the sacrifice helps you to do tshuva, fantastic. Or if the tshuva helps you bring a sacrifice, great. But ultimately, it's not about the sacrifice. It's about the tshuva. And that's the way the Sforno learns it. In Judaism, it's a very important part, because without tshuva, the carbon is worth nothing. You have to be misvada and you have to do tshuva in order for the carbon to take effect anyways. But just this concept that he's saying, Hashem doesn't even want the sacrifice. He wants you to do tshuva. Sometimes the sacrifice is what inspired the person. That's one of the explanations about karbanis, about sacrifices, that a person comes and sees an animal is going instead of my sin, and maybe that would have been me, right? So it's supposed to inspire somebody to do tshuva. But ultimately, it's about the tshuva, and it's not about the sacrifice. The Mamlei says that it's continuation from the previous pasuk, and along the lines of some of the commentaries that we already mentioned. So the previous pasuk says that, Rabbi Sasisa, you've done so many miracles for me. So a person might say, Hashem has done so many miracles for me. Why? So that way I give something back. What am I going to give back? I'll give a sacrifice. In the times of the temple and before, bringing a sacrifice was a very common thing as a thank you to Hashem. David HaMelech says, no, I think that's what the Eibishter wants, that he did miracles for you, so therefore bring a sacrifice. No, listen to what Hashem wants. Listen to his words. Do what Hashem wants. It's a cheap, in a way, these are my words, not David HaMelech's words. A sacrifice is a cheap cop-out. A sacrifice is a way out, saying, yeah, I'm bringing a sacrifice, and therefore I'm potter, I'm done. The real way to do it, do tshuva, listen to Hashem's words, do what Hashem wants. And ultimately, the Mamlois continues and says that we're looking for kapara. What is kapara? Kapara means to get atonement for something that we've done. So there is a way to do it with a carbon, but it's a much better way to do it with tshuva. Returning to Hashem, turning back and saying, Hashem, I really want to be connected with you, is a much more powerful idea of atonement than any atonement that comes through a carbon. Pasuk Ches, Pasuk number 8. So then I said, I came with this Megillah Sefer, Kosov Aloi, that I came and I was holding this scroll and the scroll written for me. So, first of all, I just wanted to, I love, some of you know, I love finding a Gemara that explains a pasuk in Tehillim, because very often when we learn Gemara, we come across a comment from one of the sages, and he explains a pasuk in Tehillim. But when you're not in context, it's very hard to understand it. As we know, the right way is to open up the pasuk and to learn it from the inside. But it happens often that a commentary on a pasuk in Tehillim, and you move along. A comment from a sage on a pasuk Tehillim, you move along. But to do it the other way, while learning the Tehillim and to get the comments from the sages, is a whole different, not that it really connects to the rest of the kapitel, but there's a big discussion in the Gemara. And the discussion in the Gemara says, how was the Torah written? Was the Torah written in parts, or was the Torah given in one Torah? Meaning, once the Jewish people went into the land of Israel, after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, of course, they went in with one Torah scroll, and Moshe Rabbeinu, before he passed away, wrote a Torah scroll for each one of the 12 tribes, etc., etc. That's when they went into the land of Israel. But the Torah, they got already at Mount Sinai. Did they get, and the words of the Gemara is Megillas, scrolls, or was it one Torah? And it's an argument. I forget the two sages. If I remember correctly, it might be Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish that argue. I might be wrong. I can look it up after. And the comment that says, because this pasuk says that David HaMelech comes with Megillas Sefer, with a scroll of Torah. So that opinion says, look, it says in this pasuk that the Torah is in a format of scroll, not full scroll, not a Sefer Torah. To which the other argument was a pasuk in Dvarim that said Sefer Torah, and that when the Jewish people they got a whole Sefer Torah. And there's an argument in the Gemara. It's fascinating to see that from the word Megillah, even though all the commentators translated it as a Torah, but there's a whole discussion on this pasuk in the Gemara if this means if this explains to us how the Jewish people got the Torah while they were in the desert. Side note, one of my excitements. I geschmack Gemara. Rashi explains this pasuk that it's referring to Matan Torah, where we said Nasav and Ishma, that it's not referring to David HaMelech coming with a Torah, it's referring to Azamarti. Then I said, when I came with the Torah, that Nasav and Ishma, that we're going to do, and we will listen. The Radak says, a continuation of the previous pasuk, that David HaMelech says that when I was healed, I realized that you don't want sacrifices. All you want is Hine Basi. You want me to come with the Sefer Torah. You want me to come and study Torah. That's all you want. So in a continuation, in the approach of the Radak, that this whole chapter is talking about David HaMelech after becoming healed, that he recognizes the important things in life, right? Sometimes it takes a scare, a health scare, for people to recognize important things in life, and hopefully they recognize, even in Judaism, the important things in life. David HaMelech recognizes the importance of the study of Torah, that's the important thing. It's not sacrifices, it's about study of Torah, connecting to Hashem through the study of Torah. Next pasuk tes, ultimately what you want is for us to do your will. Rashi says, and he ends off, and your Torah is in my innards. What's this idea of in my innards? That Rashi says that David HaMelech is saying that even my eating, even what I ingest, what goes into my innards, I do according to Torah. I do in a proper way according to Torah. The Metzudah says that it means that the Torah is part of my heart. It's something that's inside of me. It's a part of me. The Mamlei says that the first part of the pasuk, to do your will, brings out the idea of action, and then the second part of the pasuk that says that the Torah is in my innards, it brings out the idea of das, of thought, of learning, of the seichel. And he was saying, David HaMelech is saying over here that he was doing a proper approach, that on the action side, and and your Torah is a part of my thought. So the proper approach in thought and action. Also mentioned the Mamlei is that David HaMelech is saying that all I want to do is your will, that sometimes I forget to eat. And sometimes instead of food, what I eat is Torah. the forgetting to eat. I get full on this on the study of Torah. This pasuk, or the end of this pasuk, is something that's brought down in Hasidic philosophy. The Alter Rebbe talks about it. It's brought down in Tanya. Those of you who follow with my father on the Tanya classes, the Alter Rebbe talks about the fact that Torah becomes one with the person, and that's why the study of Torah is greater than action mitzvahs, even though we need to do action mitzvahs, but what's greater is the study of Torah. Hashem wants us. The study of Torah is ultimately in order to be able to do action mitzvahs. But what's greater? When we do an action, we use our hand to do that action. We use our feet to do that action. But the study of Torah becomes one with us, and that's unique. Putting on tefillin, you put on tefillin and then you take it off. It's not one with you. It's on you when you do the mitzvah. Lighting Shabbos candles, your hand is doing the mitzvah when you do the mitzvah. Not one with you. The candle's the candle. Your hand is your hand. That's it. Right? When you learn something, it becomes one with you. It becomes ingrained within you. Right? Philip, I'm thinking about your comment that you made to me on Friday, that you repeated Advar Torah to make sure that it gets burned into your brain. That's Torah. That's all separate from you. That's one with you. And now you can say, okay, the Dvar Torah is here and I'm there. No, it's one with you. There's nothing that you can't separate the two. And that's the uniqueness of the study of Torah over all other mitzvahs. And study of Torah is a mitzvah, right? But the uniqueness, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, the study of Torah is the most important. Why? Because it becomes one with you. And the Alter Rebbe, when he talks about this, he brings the end of this pasuk with that the study of Torah becomes part of my innards and becomes one with me, and that's the uniqueness of the study of Torah. Pasuk number 10, this idea of proclaiming in front of the masses. So Rashi says that the proclaiming is referring to the two times of Shira. The one time that we already mentioned, Shira Sayam, the time that they sang Shira after the splitting of the sea, and the Shiras Devaira, the Shira that they sang for the well, for the water that they got. And as he continues, so Bisarti Tzedek, so the Jewish people proclaimed Hashem's righteousness in these two times, and Loi Echla, as he continues, I won't restrain. They didn't stop. They didn't hold back. They sang Shira to Hashem. The Radak says that besides for doing mitzvahs, I have the obligation of spreading the kindness that you have done for me so that they can praise you. So that's the idea of making sure that other people know about it so that they can praise Hashem. And then he ends off with that what I have shared, everybody knows. Right, so whatever I say, I could say until I'm blue in the face, everybody knows. But he ends off Hashem ate daita. But then there's aspects that I don't talk about, I can't talk about, and it's what's really in my heart, and that Hashem only you know. But even that is something that Hashem knows and he's mentioning it because of his love and his faith and his trust in Hashem. The Mamlaya says that it's talking about Bisarti Tzedek, proclaiming Hashem's righteousness, is talking about teaching Torah to others. That's the idea over here. I taught the words of Torah to others. Lo yechla, I don't hold back. I teach as much as I can. And not only that, Hashem atayidaita, Hashem, you know that this is the truth. This is what I'm doing. That's what Mamlaya says. The Avid says that Bisarti Tzedek, B'kol Rav, there's different ways a person can teach. There's different ways a rabbi can give a sermon. There's different ways a person can approach the discussion of study of Torah. You can give it over on a monotone, not so exciting. It's just information. Like the way maybe they would, I've never been, but in a university, the way they would treat Judaic subjects, right? Jewish studies. Some students get so excited. There's Jewish studies. No, you want Jewish studies, come to a Torah class. Don't go to university for that. It's a waste of time. The approach to Torah study is wrong, and you have to have the proper approach to Torah study. But over here he's saying that, and this is the way the Avitz learns this pasuk, that when I teach Torah, I do it with excitement. I try to excite the others with the idea of teaching Torah, like the way someone would give over good news. That's the way the Avitz says. Someone give over good news. They're excited to give over the good news. They want it. They're part of it. They're excited about it. And that's the approach to study of Torah, that David HaMelech would do it with excitement in order to inspire others. The Nehemiah Melech, Melech is a Chassidische Rebbe, and he says like this. It's a beautiful word. People always think, you ask a Rebbe for a bracha. Ask a Rebbe for a bracha. What does it mean to ask a Rebbe for a bracha? Sometimes the Rebbe would give a bracha. And what does it mean? How does it work? So Ne'em Melech, I don't know if this is how it works. I'm not a Rebbe, so I can't answer that. But Ne'em Melech says, this pasuk teaches us that tzaddikim give brachas. Why did they give a bracha? Someone asks them for a bracha, and they give brachas in order to lift their spirits. Someone's coming with a sad story, with a trouble, with a hardship, and the tzaddik gives a bracha. But then what happens? The tzaddik goes and davens on their behalf. It's not just giving a bracha. The tzaddik turns around and goes and davens. I mentioned before about the Rebbe's answer to my parents. The Rebbe said, Tavasri Ta'iv, and then the Rebbe said, Askir al Tzion. I'm going to mention it at my father-in-law's grave, meaning I'm going to the oil. I have to daven for this. This is not something that, you can just give a bracha and that's it. So the Ne'em Melech says on this pasuk, right, that Bisarti Tzedek B'Kol Rav. People ask me for brachas. I'm giving brachas, B'Kol Rav, in front of the multitudes. But then and then I can't have a break. I'm saying I'm davening on their behalf all the time. Svasai, my lips, they won't stop. I have to literally sit and daven. My lips can't stop in order to help them, in order to daven on their behalf. So it's interesting the way the Ne'em Melech uses this pasuk to explain how tzaddik's bracha works. That a tzaddik gives a bracha, but then turns around and davens on their behalf. Pasuk Yud Aleph. I don't cover over your righteousness. So the Radak says that even if I'm not thinking about the tzedek, about the righteousness that Hashem gives me at every moment, I never cover it over. Never try to make it as if it doesn't exist, so to speak. I never block it. It's always there, and it's and even if I'm not thinking about it at that moment. The Yavid says, we mentioned earlier about from the Mamlois that David Melech was saying that I'm proper in thought and action. So the Yavid says that not only am I proper, am I whole, shalem in my action and my thoughts, but in teaching of these ideas, meaning the teaching of Torah to the Yidden, teaching Torah to the Jewish people, teaching Torah to others, and not only individuals, also to groups. That's also, so it's not only, because there's a few steps over here. There's an idea of action mitzvahs, doing mitzvahs, because that's what Hashem wants. There's idea of understanding Torah, learning Torah, but then there's idea of disseminating Torah, of teaching Torah to others. And that's this next step that he mentions, according to the Yavetz, that he mentions the Pasuk Yud Aleph, that he mentions the Pasuk 11. Pasuk 12. So Hashem, don't stop with your mercy towards me. So the Radak says, just like you saved me from this, you'll save me from other troubles in the future. This is, again, a form of praise to Hashem that Avraham Melech has said many times so far through Tehillim, and will say many times in the rest of Tehillim. The Sfarnu says that he's asking Hashem, Ato Hashem, don't hold back your mercy. Why? Because if you do, I have more to do. There's things that I need to get done, and if you and I don't want to hold back from things that I need to do. So Hashem help me so that I could get done what I need to do in a spiritual sense, meaning the mitzvahs and the learning Torah that he wants to do. The Mamlei says in the previous pasuk it says, two psukim ago, pasuk 10, it says, that I proclaim Hashem's righteousness and my lips don't stop. So he's asking, not just like I don't stop, you also shouldn't stop. Your mercy shouldn't cease towards me. Mamlei is coming. He continues and he says that there's another way to learn this pasuk, that Ato Hashem leisichla rachamecha mimeni, that Hashem, don't withhold mercy from me. Make sure, it's a beautiful pshat, a beautiful pirush on the pasuk. It doesn't fit so well in the pshat, but it's a beautiful pirush. Make sure that I never forget the idea of mercy. Ato Hashem, you Hashem, leisichla, don't hold back from me, rachamecha, mercy. I should always have this idea of mercy. I should always be merciful on others. This is David HaMelech talking, king, right? To recognize and to know and to be able to be merciful, he knows that he needs a good bracha from Hashem in order to be able to be merciful. And that's another way to learn this pasuk. Pasuk Yud Gimel, pasuk 13. So this negativity surrounds me, and so much, as the pasuk says, so much negativity, as much as the hair on my head. So Mitzuda says that all the negativity that's created, where does it come from? David HaMelech says this negativity comes through a sin, as we know. Every time we do a mitzvah, every time we say a word of Torah, we create an angel that works for us. And every time we do something negative, so we create an angel that works against us. It's a famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that we've learned in the past. So all this negativity that he's talking about, the ki affu alai rois, that this negativity, this evil that surrounds me. So according to the Mitzudas, is about the sins that I've done. It's catching up with me, and I lost the stamina that I have in my heart. That's the way the Mitzudas learns this pasuk. The Radak says that the stamina, it's not the stamina in the heart, it's talking about in general a loss of strength, that because of sins I've lost strength. And so this also says that because of the loss of strength, I couldn't focus on the study of Torah. And that's what he's complaining about. He's not complaining so much about the suffering, he's complaining about the time that he wanted to study Torah and now can't study Torah. The Alshich says, very nice pirush on Pasuk Yud Gimel, and he splits it into two. He says, there's ki afu alai rois, adim mispar, and isiguni avei naisai. There's two things that were chasing David HaMelech in his lifetime. There were two categories of negativity that chased David HaMelech. So first of all, there were the bad people, his enemies, the people that tried to do bad things to David HaMelech. And so that's the physical negative that he dealt with here in this world. And there's also the negativity that comes through sin. And that's the more of the spiritual. And the Alshich says that he's referring to both. He's asking Hashem to help him get through the negativity of both of these categories, the physical and the sin and the spiritual part. The Mamleya says the fact that there's negativity, the chlal, if there's negativity, there's a sin somewhere nearby, it comes from something. And he goes on to say that as he continues in the pasuk, that there's sins more than the hair on my head. And not only that, why does he use hair? Mamleis continues and says, why does he use hair as an analogy, as an example? Because when you cut the hair, what happens? It comes back. And that's what he said, that David HaMelech also dealt with things on a much different level than me or you, but had to do tshuva for what he had to do tshuva, and recognizing that it's a constant state of needing to do tshuva. Pasuk Yudalid. Did it say? It's a beautiful word, actually. Did it say? It's almost like Yehi Ratzon. Yehi Ratzon may be your will. Did it say it should be your will? And that's what he's saying over here. Did it say, Hashem, it should be your will, Hashem, that Latzileni, to save me. And then he ends off. You have to hurry up. Time is short. You have to come quickly. Why do you have to come quickly? So we mentioned already that David HaMelech, ultimately what he wants is to do what he needs to do, to study Torah, to do mitzvahs, to lead the Jewish people, etc. So do it quickly because there's a lot of work that has to get done. Pasuk number 15, again in the form of prayer, David HaMelech is asking that those who drove him crazy, not only those who made him meshuga, those who also wanted to kill him. So Yevaishuv Yachbru Yachad, even though they were Yachad, even though they were together, and sometimes in general we know this idea that when people do things together, the Achdus in unity, it usually endures, but not when they would go against David. So even though they were Yachad, but the Yevaishuv Yachbru, they should disappear. Those who wanted to kill me, and they should go backwards. They should retreat in disgrace. Anybody who wanted to harm me. So the Mitzuda says that this is, David HaMelech is not asking for something to happen to them. He's asking that Hashem should bring salvation to him. And when they bring salvation to them, then they will be embarrassed and retreat and walk backwards. And Pasuk 16, Yashaimu, they'll be desolate. Al Ekev Bashtam, they return to their shaming. Who? The ones who said, the ones who were joyful when David HaMelech was going through a hard time, right? So the Alshich, though, so let's see the simple pshat, right? Let's go through it again. That David HaMelech is saying that those, when they see the salvation that Hashem brings to David HaMelech, they'll be shameful. They'll be shamed. They'll return in shame, and they'll say, "Who will return in shame? Those who said, aha." Those who were joyful when David HaMelech went through a hard time. The Alshich on this pasuk says that David HaMelech is saying that when Hashem brings salvation to David HaMelech, and these people are going to realize that that Hashem is in David HaMelech's court, that Hashem is helping David HaMelech, they're going to be embarrassed that they didn't recognize it earlier at the time that they were being boastful, that they were saying, ha'ach, ha'ach, aha. Then when they were being joyful in what David HaMelech was going through. That's what they're going to be, how long they're going to be embarrassed, and how long did it take for them to recognize the truth? We mentioned already earlier in this chapter, this is something very important, that a person, and that's we mentioned it when we said Ashrei HaGever, praised is the person. Praise is a person who could recognize something, see something, and say, hold on a second, this demands a change in me. This demands that I should recognize that the Eibishter runs the world. This demands that I should recognize that Hashem is on David HaMelech's side, and therefore I'm going to make a change in my life. That's a very powerful thing. That's Ashrei HaGever, praises that person. And here it continues that they're going to be embarrassed that they didn't do it earlier, because look at what's going on over here. Hashem is obviously on David HaMelech's side. They're going to be embarrassed that they laughed at David and that they didn't recognize earlier that Hashem is on his side. Pasuk 17, Pasuk Yud Zayin. Now you're going to have Yasisu v'Yismechu, the joyful ones. Right? Who are they going to be joyful? Bicha, as the Mitzvah says, they're going to find joy in you, in Hashem, in your salvation that you bring to David HaMelech. Salvation will also come to the others that love you, and that's the continuation of the pasuk, right? They'll be joyful in you for the salvation that you bring to David HaMelech, and they'll always say Yigdal Hashem, they'll always say praised is Hashem or great is Hashem, etc. And they will also bring those who love you, also bring them salvation. The Radak says that as opposed to the haters that will be embarrassed, that we mentioned before about the haters, about the ones who were going against David HaMelech, that they'll be embarrassed. Those will put their trust in you, will be joyous. Meaning, there's the opposite of the previous pasuk, previous two psukim, that talks about those who drove David crazy, that they would ultimately be embarrassed. To the other side of the ones who followed in Hashem's ways and put their trust in Hashem, those people are going to be joyful. And when they're joyful, what does it create? Yigdal Hashem, it creates a Kiddush Hashem, it creates a sanctification of Hashem's name. And when Hashem does and helps those who put their trust in Him. Pasuk number 18, David HaMelech in his humility says, and for me, Ani V'Abin, what am I? I am poor and needy. I'm poor and needy. So what does it mean? David HaMelech wasn't poor, he wasn't needy, he was a king. Especially if we're translating this chapter to be after he got better. So the Mitzvah says that David HaMelech is saying in front of you, Ani V'Abin, compared to Hashem, what am I? Nothing. I'm a nothing, right? And he's like saying it in a form of a merit. He wants the schus of saying it, that brings salvation quickly, because I'm ani ve'avian, because I'm poor and needy. The Radak says that David HaMelech is saying that even though I'm king, I still need something. Anybody who needs something is an ani ve'avian. Anybody who needs something is missing something in their life. They're needy, right? So even the person who has everything, the king of the Jewish people, the ultimate king in this world, besides Melech, Malachim, Malachim, besides Hashem, but the highest level of person, the king of the Jewish people, David HaMelech, still needs to come to Hashem. Still needs something from Hashem. Ani vevin, poor and needy, because I need to come to Hashem. It's a very reich, it's a very rich understanding of life. You have everything, but you still recognize that you need to come on to Hashem, even when you have everything. And therefore, it's not that, I have everything, and therefore I'm set, I'm good. On the contrary, Because of everything, I recognize that there's still something that I don't have, and therefore I'm an aniv evian. I have to come onto, so to speak. I need Hashem to be on my side as well. So it says, Elikim Yachshav li, Hashem should please think about me, right? That's the simple pshat. So that's the Radak brings that down as the simple pshat. Yachshav, Hashem, please think about me and help me. And the other way to translate the Yachshav is what would be the English word? When you create a ledger. So there's a cheshbon. And it's from the same word as Yachshav. The same word as Yachshav. So when you create this list of things, let's say that you need. So there's a cheshbon, there's a list.
An accounting.
Right? So,
account.
Yeah, an account. Yeah,
take an account of me.
Right.
Take an account of me.
Right. So, but what should you take in account? Take an account that I'm an Oni Vevian. Yachshav, make the cheshbon that I'm an Ani Vevian, and that should be mechaper. That should atone for everything, and therefore I shouldn't have to suffer. Another way to Yachshav. So either think about me to help me, or think about it, meaning make it out of the list. The fact that I'm an Ani Vevian and it should be mechaper. It should stand in my, in my stead. It should stand for help from me. The Svarnu says, don't delay, because there's a lot that needs to get done. Elikai al ta'achar. This is the way we finish the pasuk, the way we finish the chapter. That ultimately he's asking Hashem, we need your help. We can't do it without you. As much as David HaMelech, king of Israel, has everything that he needs, but there's something that I still need, and therefore I'm considered to be an Ani Vevian. And not only that, Elikai, my God, my Hashem, al ta'achar, don't delay. Why don't delay? As the Svarnu mentions, and was mentioned in this chapter before, because I have a lot to do. Not that I have a lot to do in order to indulge myself. I have a lot to do for you, Hashem. I have a lot of Torah to learn. I have a lot of Torah to teach, and I have a lot of mitzvahs to do. And that's what he's asking for Hashem to help him in order to be able to do all the things that he needs to do. And with that, we finish chapter 40, Kapitel Mem. Any questions or comments?